This is Whiskey Whereabouts. I'm Tim, and it's week 1 of MALT Madness 2025. Group 1 has 21-year Glenkeith, Abunad Alba, Deanston 12-year, Nc'Nean Organic, and Wemyss Hive blended malt. Let's go. My whiskey journey has taken me to Scotland and back. I've explored whiskey education, tastings, and distilleries from Islay to Speyside. And now my journey continues here, with you, on Whiskey Whereabouts. So this is a blind tasting tournament. I've taken 20 whiskeys out of a 2024 Whiskey Advent calendar. I ranked them pretty arbitrarily. We're going to have 4 weeks of blind tastings. Each week, 5 whiskeys. One winner moves on to the final 4, where we will crown the champion of MALT Madness 2025. It's all in the spirit of the big college basketball tournament that happens throughout March and into April every year here in the U.S. Now, this first group, designated as the Highland Cow group, includes the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. It's 21-year Glenkeith. Glenkeith is a Speyside distillery, primarily goes into blends, and there is a secret Speyside series that Chivas puts out. There are 3 Glenkeiths in that series, including this 21-year, sort of like a flora and fauna type of situation. And it's 43% whiskey, and not a lot of information on this one. Bottle says oak barrels and butts, whatever that means. The second competitor in this group, the 5 seed in the tournament overall, it's Aberlour Abunad Alba. This is batch 7 of the bourbon cask. Abunad is a whiskey that Aberlour has been putting out for a very long time, and it is a cask strength sherry bomb. And not too long ago, they started doing it with bourbon casks. So here we have the bourbon version, 58.5%. It is non-chill filtered, and it is aged entirely in Quercus Alba, American white oak, hence the name. The next competitor we have is the well-known entry-level 12-year Deanston 12 bourbon matured whiskey, coming in at 46.3% with a proper presentation. Next, we have a non-age statement whiskey from a relatively new distillery, Nc'Nean. And this is a whiskey that they call the Organic. It's 46% whiskey. They claim 100% Scottish barley. This distillery has only been distilling since 2017. It's not an age statement, but if you go on the website, you can get a bunch of information, including the age of the youngest whiskeys in that vatting, a la Bruichladdich. If you haven't seen my video where I sort of double back to explain how that works and how you can access the information, I'll put the link up here in regard to the classic laddie. Of course, I don't have the actual bottle. This is a sample bottle that came out of the Advent calendar, so I can't access the specific information about my batch. But kudos to Nc'Nean. They are very sustainably minded, 100% renewable, net zero distillery, 100% recycled glass in the bottles. The final competitor in this flight had to earn its place here, and it was the winner of the play-in flight on Monday. In Monday's bonus preview episode, I had 3 blended scotches, 2 blended malts, and a single malt, and the whiskey that emerged from that flight is a blended malt from Wemyss. It's called the Hive. It's 46%. It is non-age statement. I've got them poured in the blue blind tasting glasses. They have been placed randomly. I do not know which is which. And what I'm going to do is start, as I always do, on this side, work my way through the flight, and I'm going to give rankings for each stage of the whiskey before I declare the winner, who will move on. So getting started here on the noses with whiskey number 1, MALT Madness 2025 begins. We have no peated whiskey in our flight here. It's Speyside and Highland only, so we have no island whiskey. We don't have a lot of sherry, but we have some. We don't know what's going on with that Glenkeith 21-year. We don't know what's going on with the cask with the Wemyss. I think that there is some wine cask in that Nc'Nean that I skipped over. Yeah, it's red wine, bourbon cask with a small percentage of sherry in the vat. But I'm going to say the weakest nose is on whiskey number 1. Nice sweet, buttery kind of sweet. Has another sort of element to it that is fruit and more floral. Then I'm going to say the second weakest is whiskey number 2. It's a nice nose, but it has a sort of a sour kind of fruit to it, a licorice element that's pretty strong, and the rest of the nose kind of underneath. Probably the most exotic of the noses. What is the next nose? This is hard because one of these is so much hotter than the others. It's hard to sort of account for that. I'm going to give it the benefit of the big flavor versus how intense it's going to be having sat with it and acclimated. So I'm going to go, that's not the next, I'm going to go in order here. I'm going to still keep going in order to whiskey number 3. A subtler nose. There's a little cinnamon here. Little spice, plenty of flavor there. This is the hottest nose, so I have a good idea what this whiskey is because it is so clearly more potent than the others. What am I getting after that first wave? It's nice. It's rich. There's a lot of wood. There's a lot of vanilla, caramel. There's some fruit to it, some orchard fruit. We got a lot of Speyside whiskey in this flight. I got a pretty good idea of which one this one is. That would line up. And that means that the 5th whiskey is going to be the winner. So I went in order on the noses, just randomly. What I like about this one is that there's some complexity going on here. It doesn't come on too strong. It's not as subtle as this one, but it's balanced. There's a nice sweetness, a nice fruit, a nice presence of the wood. Yeah, there's a nice complexity and balance here, and that's what I like about this one. I've been doing these blind fights for a while on this channel, and that has never happened before. So let's see how we do on the palates. I'm gonna start over here and work my way through. Yeah, honey, vanilla, oak, not a lot of heat. Finish throws a little bit of a different element in. Pretty straightforward. But nice. Going to whiskey number 2 now. This is a pretty nice palate. That's a pretty good whiskey. Whiskey number 3 on the palate. It's not super complicated, and a lot of the sort of usual, but like I'm saying, like caramel, like baked, like it's condensed, and it's nice. Whiskey number 4. That's definitely the whiskey I think it is. You can see, but it's plenty hot on the palate while I'm holding it, trying to unpack it. And what's really striking to me is it's really it's pretty bright red apple bordering on cherry with some of the sort of bourbon cask kind of usual elements with the vanilla and the like. It's still tingling on my tongue while I'm talking to you on that finish. So this is definitely the hot Cask Strength whiskey in the flight. It's nice, but it's a lot neat. Assuming this whiskey is what I think it is, nobody drinks this neat. I mean, I certainly don't. I mean, you taste it, to note it, and when you pour this, I mean, 60%. This one's just under 60. But I've had the traditional sherry matured, and it's, I've had 62%. You always put a teaspoon of water in that if you're gonna drink it. It's a lot. It's a lot coming at you, but it's a lot of rich flavor. I'm gonna get to the finish later, but on that palate, pretty solid. 5 on the palate now. Really bourbon casky, really traditional. Finish throws your curveball again. Staying on the palate, it's really vanilla. It's really creamy. Is there? Yeah, it's a full-on pear on that sort of orchard fruit. Nice. Not very hot, especially after this, but plenty rich. There's no dud here. Okay, so I'm ready to rank the palates, starting with number 1, weakest palate. Then I'm going to say the second weakest palate is whiskey number 2. I like it, but I liked whiskey number 3 palate a little bit more. And this one is pretty, reserved maybe, but I like the depth of the flavor here. I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna go with whiskey number 4, the big Cask Strength whiskey. big, bold. It needs some water to sip, but there's just so much richness here coming at you. I'm gonna rank it above this, and that means whiskey number 5 wins on palate as well. I did it again. So I'm ready to rank the finishes now, and I'm not gonna do it again. I am gonna shake up the order, but we are gonna start with whiskey number 1. It's the weakest finish. It's the weakest whiskey in this fight. It's not bad. It's just not as good as the others. Then I'm gonna say whiskey number 4, the whiskey we both know what this whiskey is, and it is, it's just too hot, and there's just not enough going on to justify that. This whiskey really needs to have some water. Then I'm gonna say that it's whiskey number 3. Nice finish. So to determine the winner of finish, which is not the same order that we've already broke the order. Are we gonna break the final? And we are. I'm gonna say the next one is whiskey number 5. As I was saying, that finish is not on the level with the other 2 sort of stages of this whiskey. That means whiskey number 2 has the best finish. Having tabulated the results, I am ready to rank the whiskeys in the first group of Malt Madness 2025. And I am ready to declare the winner, who will go on to compete in the final 4 flight for the championship. Malt Madness 2025. So starting with the weakest and working up to the winner. The weakest is obviously no surprise. Whiskey number 1. It finished last in each of the categories, and it is our 20 seed. The Cinderella story ends here for the Wemyss blended malt. It's not bad. It's not on the level of these whiskeys. The results showed that. The next whiskey is something that the committee had to sort of weigh, because this whiskey came in dead middle in every category. And how do you rank that? Some of them got higher ranks and some of them fell below. So consistently in the middle means second place. This is gonna be whiskey number 3, and it's at Nc'Nean. That's a nice whiskey. I really enjoyed this whiskey, and it was very solid throughout. It just didn't rise above the others. So second place there. So the next whiskey is a weird one because it only finished in second for nose and palate, but it won finish. And a win in a category is worth a lot to the committee. So I'm gonna say the third place whiskey is whiskey number 2, which is the Glen Keith. So our number 1 seed in the tournament has fallen. It always happens this way, right? This is good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I think especially in a flight with, especially a rambunctious whiskey like this, really old whiskey like this, is not sort of jumping out of a glass. I think probably would do better to really sit multiple sort of pours and have a bottle of this. But any case, third place goes to the oldest whiskey in the tournament this year, the 21-year Glen Keith. So that leaves 4 and 5 to determine the winner. So we've got the big Cask Strength whiskey, and we have whiskey number 5. And there shouldn't be a lot of suspense here, because whiskey number 4, which is Aberlour, our Alba, obviously, came in 4th of 5th in 2 categories, but the finish, I really sort of penalized it, so that costed any chance, I think, at advancing. And obviously, there's no question what this whiskey was. So that means I have named Deanston 12 somehow the winner of this first flight. It will move on to the final 4. Such a predictable whiskey tube thing to do, but there it is. I mean, it won 2 categories. There's nothing wrong with this whiskey's finish. When I sit back and look at this flight and look at the results, what a value this whiskey is. A really quality whiskey. Let's see how it compares to, we're gonna have 3 other really high quality whiskeys in the final 4. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. We're gonna sort all this out. There's a big button right over here, so you can do so. I will see you next week.